You also have to be very, very good in decision making on what stocks to take, at what timing. You really have to be very patient. No, this is not a sprint. It is a marathon. It doesn't really cater to any specific segment, but for now, there has been a lot of demand from the institutional side. From the retail side, it's also beginning to gain traction because of the performance. We like it because it's actually characterized by very low volatility. We actually consider very highly companies that are able to grow their dividends per share. No? Specific examples would be the REITs.
Hi everyone, I am Aaron Lay and you are listening to Dragonfly's The Dividend Investor, the podcast of the most profitable hour of the day. So this is the podcast where we share stories, strategies, and habits that will help you build a future of passive income. So whether nagsisimula ka pa lang or you are already a seasoned investor, I'm sure marami kang mapupulot sa podcast na to. So our special guest in today's episode is the head of equities at BPI Wealth, who brings over 34 years of experience in the financial industry, mostly in equity evaluation analysis, global commercial property investment consultancy, and fund management. He is the fund manager behind BPI's Philippine High Dividend Equity Fund. So basically, it's like a basket of stocks that you can purchase now in Dragonfly for as little as 1,000 pesos. So, Mr. Erwin Balita, thank you for joining us and welcome to the Dragonfly's Dividend Investor Podcast.
Yeah, hi, good day to your podcast followers.
Yes. Good day to you as well, Sir Erwin. Could you please tell us a little bit about your professional background and how you came to lead the equities team at BPI Wealth?
Well, I've been a fund manager for BPI since 2012, but I started out my career working as a credit analyst in one of the top local banks in the country, which is now part of the PSEI 30 member index. After that, what swayed me to go into domestic equity valuation was the bull market in 1993. Pretty much everything that you bought at that time produced 10 to 20% in returns. No? So that's what magnetized me to go into equity space. I've also worked as an equity analyst for several foreign and local brokerages before landing a research job in BPI Asset Management Group and eventually being a portfolio manager, no, afterwards.
Yes. I mean, 1993 is such a long time now, no, right?
Yeah, but those were the good times for the market, one of the best times during that.
Hopefully, those times come back to our markets, right?
Well, we're not sure, no, but we are hopeful and optimistic that there is a cycle that the bull market can actually come. So.
All right. Throughout your career, what do you think is your greatest achievement so far? And is there a moment na you're proud of, like pinaka-proudest moment mo?
The highlight of my career is really being in a very good institution that caters to a great deal of clients. No? And I'm happy to say that we have been part of the growth of BPI Asset Management over the years. In fact, we achieved a milestone a couple of years back when we hit our then ambitious target of having 1 trillion pesos in assets under management.
My next question, Sir Erwin, is what key experiences did you have that prepare you to manage a well-performing fund like PPI's Philippine High Dividend Equity Fund?
Yeah, well, fortunately for me, my college course, which was business economics in UP Diliman, equipped me with, no, with the tools needed for this job to start with. And as I mentioned, having worked as a credit analyst early in my career, then into financial modeling for equity evaluation, totally gave me a full circle no, in terms of how to analyze all these companies and integrated it with the decision-making process no, as to what strategies to take in trying to enhance the equity portfolio of BPI.
For our audience aspiring one day na they might want to be a fund manager as well, is there any tips that you could give them on how they can prepare to be one someday?
Having a financial background is, I think, very, very important. Then you have to have very good analytical skills to be able to filter through all the stocks that are going to be in your universe. You also have to be very, very good in decision making on what stocks to take, at what timing. You really have to be very patient, no? Because from what we've learned, this is not a sprint. it is a marathon, and it takes a while for your strategies to actually take into fruition. No? So you really have to have a strategic.
And I really like what you said, Sir Erwin. It's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Because before when I started in the industry as well, nabibilib ako when people have triple-digit performances or like very good performances for the year. But then as I age in this industry, now mas nabibilib na ako pag the longer they are in the industry, parang I respect them even more. Parang if they're trading or investing in the markets for like decades already, parang that to me, mas nakawaw siya.
Yeah. Actually, what we want to profess is really stability in growth. What we're trying to offer clients is really a steady performance. So across the industry, our goal is really to be in the top quartile consistently, no? Not fluctuating from being number one. Then on the next period, you go to the last half or last quartile, no? So what we want is steady performance for our clients.
Yes, that's very good to hear. So actually, Sir Erwin, moving on to the fund itself, BPI Philippine High Equity Dividend Fund. I mean, from the name itself, it gives us a hint that it's about dividend-paying stocks, right? But could you please tell us a little bit more about this fund for our audience watching?
Back in 2013, we already had a suite of investment products. No, however, I think what we lacked was really something that catered to the defensive, and that actually produced this idea, no, of having a defensive strategy, and of course benefiting from companies that consistently generate cash flow. So we actually thought of establishing a dividend fund. For now, we're grateful that it's doing well since inception. We continue to actually build on that success, no, to further grow this type of strategy.
Okay, so you mentioned about how this is for defense, right? Could you please tell us who is this fund for? Like, who are the investors that should choose this fund?
It doesn't really cater to any specific segment, but for now, there has been a lot of demand from the institutional side. From the retail side, it's also beginning to gain traction because of the performance. We like it because it's actually characterized by very low volatility. As you can see, Philippine market has continued to remain volatile because of the low volume turnover that we have. So over the last 10 years, we've noticed that despite the volatility, this fund continued to grow and actually produced very decent returns, no? Even better than fixed income. So it seems to be our all-weather fund, no, that has been gaining traction, I said, in terms of interest. It is really characterized by underlying companies that continue to produce growth at a steady pace and actually grow dividends, no, for our investors.
Okay, Sir Erwin, speaking of the performance that you mentioned earlier, like how the fund is doing so well, right? What do you think is the main characteristic or attribute as to why the fund is performing that well?
Well, as I said, no, it is defensive in nature. And in this volatile environment wherein there are a lot of external factors that are beyond our control, like geopolitical, oil prices, decisions from the U.S. administration, a defensive stance of a fund would actually help it, no, in terms of performance. And as long as it delivers that cash flow year in, year out, should be good for valuations. No? So,
do you think it's safe to say that you mentioned that people are looking for stability, right? So do you think the money is moving to like dividend paying stocks as well? That's why parang they're holding up their prices and they might go up.
Yeah, for some reason, over the last 7 or 8 years, we've noticed that a lot of people are actually going into this type of strategy. Essentially, there were quite some companies that continue to benefit from COVID, like a work from home environment technically unlocked, no, the value of all these telcos, given the phenomenon of Zoom and all these web-based meetings. The utility companies, of course, continued to flourish despite the environment created by COVID. And there was limited face-to-face interaction, but you still had to use your telephone lines. You had to use water and energy, for electricity. So it is quite defensive, and for some reason, people wanted to benefit. For those that are giving out consistent cash dividends, they wanted to enjoy life to the fullest, no? And outside of capital gains, they wanted to enjoy the benefits of some cash payments on a periodic basis, no? So that's based on our observation.
They call passive income, right? Parang ganun.
Correct.
Something that goes back to them.
Yeah. Well, passive income was really more for those retirees, but this one, even young people who can opt to work, might opt to lessen their load for work and actually live on interest, no, or cash flow from their investments. So,
Yes. And speaking on the defensive nature that you talked about, would it be okay for me to think that thinking na these businesses have very defensive are defensive in nature, right? Kasi parang from last quarter to this quarter, you would expect their earnings na if not steady, parang tataas pa sila konti. Is that how you put it then?
companies that produce a lot of cash, like water utilities, energy companies, and telcos, would typically have that characteristic. While their businesses do not grow as fast, they produce a lot of services that are just necessary for everyday life, no? Which allows them to distribute some of these cash payments.
And they're
to their
very
investors.
predictable as well. Like as you mentioned, they won't be hit by some uncertain political issues or other factors, as unlike like the different stocks out there. Correct.
Well, the risk of all these utilities, as we have learned over the years and probably now, would be the regulatory environment, which could be brought about by some political events. But I guess these events would eventually pass. These companies, hopefully, if they are not really that adversely affected by all these factors, would continue to grow their business despite all these external factors. No?
Okay, so moving forward, before we talked about the fund itself, Sir Irwin, I would like to preface the discussion first by talking about dividend investing as a strategy. How do you think does dividend investing allow investors to weather the volatility of the stock market?
We actually prioritize for the fund, no, that investors would actually buy. The underlying companies out there are less volatile. They are defensive and essentially well managed. No? So these companies, while being the largest in their industries, should be able to cope well in any environment. No? And that's in terms of how they benefit from it. Our stock selection criteria would actually cover not just the cash payments, but the undervaluation as well. No? You'll be surprised that some of these companies are trading at very low price to earnings multiples. Some of them are less than book value. And in any point that the market recovers, they will benefit from the capital gains. No? Although what we're professing is really taking a long-term view on all these underlying stocks for the fund to actually grow.
Okay, Sir Irwin, for our audience sake, what does low price to earnings multiple mean?
Well, essentially, price to earnings multiple is some sort of a metric that measures the investment return or the time period for your investments to be able to be recovered. No? Like if you're talking about a 5 times price to earnings multiple, that means you technically get your investment back in 5 years. Kasi for the earnings that you pay, which is your denominator, you pay a certain price, which is the numerator naman. No? So that's one of the more simplistic approaches to valuation analysis.
For example, I have two companies here, and then they both give me 1 peso. But this company, I have to pay 5 pesos to purchase it. This one naman, I have to pay like 1 pesos. So parang this 5 pesos, I have to pay 5 pesos for this one. So it has a higher PE multiple. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, in essence, the lower the PE multiple is, the better. But of course, that assumes no growth for both companies. Obviously, a company with a higher growth would catch up, no, in terms of lower multiple to the future. So we're just talking about very simplistic metrics without growth. But of course, if there's growth, that's why you pay a higher multiple for these growth companies, no.
Is that the reason why sometimes kasi I notice that these companies, they have like really expensive multiples for that matter, let's say 20, but these stocks keep on going higher and higher, right? And sometimes they even get to like 30 PE, 30 multiple or 40, 50, etc. And then on the other hand, some companies naman that are really cheap tends to be cheap for like a very long time. So is this, I think this is where dividend investing comes into play, right? Because for these cheap companies, at least when they go lower and lower, you have a higher yield that you can get from them.
Yeah, medyo fair growth for these companies because the growth trajectory is actually not as exuberant, no, as a growth company. That's why they're able to distribute cash, no, because they probably have no alternative to grow their balance sheet, no. So
Sir Irwin, what do you think are the advantages of being a dividend investor and getting like some sort of paycheck or dividends from them versus, for example, like trading or value investing?
well, it's very different, no? Kasi the reason why you invest in dividend-paying companies is that you expect some cash flow, no, as part of your return, and that passive flow or income is probably for dependent on your financial goal. No? Is it reserved for your monthly payments, or is it something that you plan to buy moving forward? No? As for investments in value, in value strategy, you're actually in it for the capital gains alone. No, so kasi there are two ways to earn from buying a stock. No, it's from your dividends and from the capital appreciation. So two totally different strategies there.
For you personally, Sir Irwin, which path would you choose?
It's always good to have a balance in terms of strategy. That's why we offer this type of product. No? Depending on your financial goals, you can actually have something that has growth orientation, which could benefit from a good economic cycle. But in terms of downturns, then your defensive portfolio naman will perform. So it's always good to have a balance in terms of your strategic portfolio.
So speaking of like having multiple portfolios for balance, Sir Irwin, actually allow me to just share to our audience as well, like how recently we launched multiple accounts. So basically at Dragonfly, they could actually segregate different portfolios already for them. So they could have up to 4 portfolios. So as you mentioned, one can be oriented for growth, then one could be for dividends, etc. So, Sir Irwin, moving on to my next question. Do you think now is like actually a good time to be a dividend investor or to choose stocks, choose dividend paying stocks? And why so? Like, what do you think is the difference now versus like 10 years ago or 20 years ago? Is like now one of the best times to start dividend investing?
Based on the data that we have, the dividend paying strategy has actually outperformed the PSE over the last 10 years. So we're actually sticking, no, to that trend. And whether it's going to change moving forward, it's really going to depend. But for now, we're going to stick to what works for us because we are actually benchmarked against the PSEI index. No? So if it outperforms, then we'll stick to that strategy.
So, Sir Irwin, are there any factors like kunyari, family owned or being a monopoly or lack of capital appreciation sa index that actually makes dividend investing especially relevant here in the Philippines?
I don't think it's a factor. I think companies are actually built and operated depending on how it is managed. So I don't think it's a factor, no.
Okay, so I agree with everything that you said so far earlier, Sir Irwin, which is why we are so excited to have BPI funds on the Dragonfly platform or inside the Dragonfly platform. And one of these funds, BPI Philippine High Dividend Equity Fund, right? What are the 3 most important criteria do you use when selecting stocks for this fund or high dividend fund?
Yeah, so based on the framework that we've established, no, first we filtered in the universe, from our universe, what stocks could go in. But essentially, there are basic metrics like having 3 consecutive years of cash dividend payouts. That's one. Second is that they would have a minimum of 20% dividend payout from previous year's income. Third is really to have a yield of over 2 to 3%. And it has to offer a lot of upside, no, in terms of stock price. No? So those are the basic criteria that we have for inclusion in the fund.
Does the dividends need to be growing or basta constantly paying dividends for, as you mentioned, that's okay already?
Yeah, well, we have that, no. But in the Philippines, it's pretty hard to get hold of dividend aristocrats. These are the companies that can grow their dividends very fast, even probably at the pace of the income growth, no. But typically, kasi for growth companies, they would give out consistent dividend per share and not base it, no, on the net income or core net income of the company, no. But to your point, we actually consider very highly companies that are able to grow their dividends per share. No? Specific examples would be the REITs, which are actually very much in fashion, very much the favorites over the last 5 years, no, since listing. In fact, Ayala REIT performed well. And it's really because they were able to deliver the dividends, no, they promised, as they executed very well in terms of asset infusions. In fact, from their IPO way back in 2020 or 2021, they started out with dividends per year of, I think, 120 per share. But now they're at the pace of giving out 240 to 250, no, after 5 years. For Robinsons REITs, I think they started out with, I think, 9 cents per share per quarter. Now they're at pace to give out, I think, 11 to 12 cents on a quarter. No? So you can see that being able to grow these dividends was really a byproduct of management execution, which we think is a big factor on why the stock price has really gone up significantly.
And as you mentioned, how they communicated it to the investors and they executed it to the dot as well, right?
Yes, in fact, both A-REIT and RCR, we believe will figure out very well in the index weights, no, for the PSE moving into the next 5 years, given their commitment, no, to increase, to infuse assets into their vehicle. No? So
Actually, Sir Erwin, I was going to ask you, sana, what are your top 3 picks for REITs? So would it be okay to assume that 1 and 2 is for A-REIT and RCR?
Yeah, actually, I was reserving that for that question. No? But so A-REIT and RCR figure very well in our screens. The next would be the telcos, no? Despite the overhang in the current regulatory environment. I think Globe and PLDT are on track to give out close to 6 to 8% in dividends per share. No? And we believe that they are going to stay as the incumbent leaders despite what's happening. So we'll just wait it out. No, we believe they have a very strong franchise. They have the capabilities, no, to stay on top of the industry.
Because recently there has been a talk. I mean, Konektadong Pinoy bill has been a talk of the town, right? So would you be able to give us an overview of how this could impact na lang Globe and PLDT?
Everything is pretty much fluid now. We believe that the incumbents are not going to take it sitting down. And they're probably going to raise some issues, no, in terms of information security and the like. Nevertheless, even if it takes off, it's probably just 15 to 20% of the business. No? Both PLDT and Globe, at least that's what we have on our initial research. It's probably going to affect more or those whose businesses are directly related to offering broadband. No? So, but on a worst case scenario, it's probably gonna have a long-term impact, probably 3 to 5 years down the road, no, but not immediately.
So, Sir Erwin, moving on to my next question, would you have like a top 3 picks in mind, or top 3 dividend stocks in mind that are inside the BPI Philippine High Equity Dividend Fund that you think will do well for, let's say, the next 2 or 3 years?
Well, for now, it is very much widely known naman, and it's disclosed in our material, no, that we are weighted in Meralco, for one. We are also weighted on ICTSI and the telcos, no, given their high yields of between 7 to 9% now. We actually favor those names.
Let's go more deeply into each one of them. So you mentioned Meralco, right? So for Meralco, what about Meralco do you really like as a dividend-paying stock?
For Meralco, just very briefly, they have been able to transform themselves from a pure distribution of electricity business to a generation business, no, which we believe will be more profitable moving forward. They have very big plans on their Terra Solar project. And hopefully, no, again, given our belief that management could execute, it could actually improve their long-term prospects, no, and thereby, again, produce a lot of cash from that side of the business.
So what you're telling us is now they're venturing more into like a different segment of their business, which you think could really drive growth to their client. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on to the second pick, right? For ICTSI. I mean, ICTSI, as you mentioned kanina, I guess is one of the dividend aristocrats. That is one of the few cases that could actually grow their dividends that they pay to the investors. I mean, quarter over quarter or year over year, right? So what about ICT do you really like as a dividend-paying stock?
As you said, no, ICTSI, which used to be, I mean, during the 90s and early 2000, it was a company that was expanding abroad. For a while, there was mention that the capex would slow down in as much as there were probably less ports to operate on, but now they're back in a good expansion mode. No, so outside of its international exposure, which foreigners like, in fact, it's probably going to be one of the few companies that are going to be on investors' radars for a while, just because it trades very well. It qualifies within the foreign investors' metrics of having a $10 million per day trading turnover. That's one. Second, it's already the largest weighted stock in the PSE. No, I think overtaking SM Investments. No, so but of course, the main business is really being the gateway, no, for domestic and international trade, which to our point is somewhat of a defensive characteristic as well. So they earn toll fees from all these TEUs that come in and out of port. So we like actually the business model of ICT.
You would think, or the investors would think, that they would be disrupted with Trump's recent policies, right? But then actually, from the management themselves, they said that it won't affect their business that much, to the degree that investors were scared of. My second follow-up question with that is, you mentioned about how the business itself of ICT is doing well, how the value turnover is there as well. So do you think that one of the reasons as to why prices is going up as well is because foreign investors or bigger funds actually take liking into ICT because of that characteristic, that the volume is there?
No, well, one of the stock's likable features is really being in investors' radars. No, they meet the minimum market capitalization size. They have the volume turnover. They actually have a very good international exposure. And outside of the fact that they've been posting record volumes and record net income, management has been very, very transparent. And they have a very good mix of local and domestic businesses, no, that actually not just thrives on volume of trades, but really the negotiated rate hikes that they can get year in, year out. No?
For the volume turnover and the market capitalization, is there a number to this? Like, what's the minimum market cap for a stock to be attractive to these funds? Or what's like a minimum value turnover for these funds to take notice of these stocks?
I need to be updated on the size, but typically if you have like a market cap size of over, I think, $1 billion, that's for the minimum market cap requirement. Foreigners used to have a minimum value turnover daily of $10 million. But now I think they've reduced it to, I think, 3 or 5 million, just because some Philippine companies cannot meet it. No? And unfortunately, that's one of the factors that we need to address to be able to get into that international stage. No? If you notice, among the ASEAN names, we continue to lag, similarly to some countries like Thailand and Malaysia year to date. But some of the countries out there, markets of Indonesia, Vietnam, are really doing well. No? And part of the reason is that their markets are more liquid. It has more depth because they have more companies to offer. No? Tayo, ever since I traded in the 90s, you can only handpick a couple of companies that have been added to what was investable during that time. No? So hopefully we can get more IPOs, quality IPOs at that. And hopefully these IPOs like Maynilad or even Mint would be on the table, no? Kasi these are really companies that we look forward to investing.
I agree. I mean, speaking of Mint, you mentioned about how your third pick are the telcos, right? What's something about the telcos that you like as a dividend stock or as your third pick?
It's actually the closest thing that we have to technology or artificial intelligence that's really boomed, no, for the international markets. No, I actually attended the conference last week. And interestingly enough, one of the reasons why ASEAN has actually derated over the last few years is that they don't have any tech company or AI-related company to speak of. No? If you look at 2005, the top US companies that were listed at the time in terms of market cap has really changed or has been overhauled based on 2025. No? The only name that's in the 2005 top company in terms of size is really Microsoft. Yun na lang yung natira in 2025, and all of them have actually been newbies. No? That Mag7, you have other companies out there. So having that, a dearth of companies related to tech, we believe that the telcos could provide in a proxy form, no? Like Mint for Globe, for example. And hopefully Maya would be there in the next few years, given that they've really turned the corner and they really become profitable beginning last year.
When you say related and proxy as to how like Mint is to Globe, could you please tell us more about it? Is it because does Globe and PLDT have different exposures of different smaller tech companies? Is that it?
Well, for now, kasi you cannot really invest directly because they're not yet listed, no? Meaning the e-wallet, the e-bank, Maya. So technically similar to a GT Cap, you like Toyota, but it's not listed. So you can actually use as a proxy, the holding company. So that's what I meant of a proxy being a proxy investment to all these e-wallets.
Okay, so parang you get an indirect ownership of that company.
Indirect,
right?
indirect
Yes.
exposure, no?
Okay, another hot question to ask you, Sir Irwin, is that, I mean, some of these dividend stocks has a high paying yield, say like 5, 6, 7, 8% even. But then some of them naman have lower yields, say 2, 3, 4%, but are faster growing dividend paying stocks. Which would you prefer, the growing ones or like the high yield paying dividend stocks?
Well, for now, the strategy really highlights that we go for the more stable ones. And that means probably giving out or preferring the 7 to 8% yielders. Kasi it's pretty hard to identify companies giving a good yield and actually professing or offering very good growth as well. No? In terms of consistency or sustainability, perhaps, we would prefer the high dividend yielding for now over the less and faster growing companies kasi typically you use the cash to grow the business, diba? So,
Oh, okay. Speaking of high dividend names, one of these names is OGP. Is there a reason why OGP isn't part of BPI's Philippine High Equity Dividend Fund?
yeah, for now, I think I mentioned earlier that we have certain parameters to include some companies as part of our universe. And I think it's probably the volume turnover or the market cap size which deters some of these names, not just OGP, to enter our stock universe.
Okay, so is there any other high dividend paying stock that didn't meet the criteria but you think is a good stock overall to choose or a good dividend stock to choose?
Well, there are a lot of companies out there which offer like 10 to 12% yields. Unfortunately, given the size of some of our funds, in fact, we reached a milestone earlier this year when the dividend fund reached 10 billion pesos in AUM. Some of these companies would lack the liquidity to meet our criteria. We are very conscious of that kasi we are a very big participant in the market. We cannot accommodate all. It's really up to some of these companies to improve their free float market capitalization to be able to land into all the fund's stock investables.
Okay, my next question, Sir Irwin, is currently the fund is diversified, right? Spanning into, like, for example, 19 stocks. How do you balance your stocks across industries? So is there such a thing or such a rule that, for example, you are limited to a maximum of 10%, for example, for banks, then another 10% for REITs? Is there such a thing that you put a maximum exposure to one sector?
Well, following industry and the internal guidelines, we actually stick to our investment framework, and that is having a maximum of 15% for each name, and I think a 35 or 40% maximum exposure per sector, which we strictly follow, to not have all that concentration risk as well for our investors.
Do you think for our DIY or do-it-yourself investors out there, these rules are good to follow as well for them? So for example, they found a bank that they really like or they found a REIT that they really like pero max na yung exposure nila eh. Like kunyari they're 30% exposed to REITs already or 20%. Should they still chase that stock or parang follow the rules and move on to a different sector na lang?
Well, I guess that's really why you have all these parameters, no? Kasi we're very conscious not just about the returns, but risk-adjusted returns, which means that we have to consider risk parameters, no? Like exposures per sector, exposures per name, because you're not very sure, no? That's why investing requires a lot of diversification.
For this fund, Sir Irwin, how often do you have to update the fund? Like how often do you add or remove exposure to the stocks that you own?
Yeah, so we have a very thorough process in terms of rebalancing our portfolios, no? But at the minimum, we have a monthly committee meeting where we analyze the returns, we analyze the industry again together with our research. We have a certain marketometer which measures a lot of criteria, whether external or internal. And based on that process, we actually present it to the committee. It is a feedback system wherein the performance is reported to compliance. It is reported to the higher management. If it needs tweaking because of certain parameters, whether it has met the target, whether the yields have been reduced because of the price appreciation, then we act accordingly. No? But at the minimum, we rebalance it every month.
Another thing that I really like about this fund is how the dividends that you get from the fund, it's automatically invested back to the fund, correct? So could you please tell us more about it and why you think this is really helpful for our investors?
Well, for now, we are actually competing against a lot of funds locally and globally, which actually give a dividend payout periodically, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or even yearly. For now, we are not at that level yet. But to your question, I think reinvesting the cash proceeds or the cash dividends into the fund allows us to not miss out on opportunities, as we already have a set methodology as to where to invest it based on the strategy. So there's no lag time in terms of reinvesting it.
You're taking the hard part away from our investors, right? I mean, instead of them thinking about where should they put their cash next, right? Their
right,
dividends next, you do it for them na lang, right?
Correct, yeah.
Obviously, the list of viable stocks every month changes from time to time with all these uncertain factors and different external factors. So at least for this fund, you would do it for them instead of them doing the hard part themselves, like all the research. And I mean, not everyone has the time to be updated with everything that's happening out there, right? Okay, so Sir Erwin, imagine it's 2035. So what do you hope people say about BPI High Dividend Equity Fund? Like, for example, now 10 years from now, like what do you think, how do you envision the fund to be, and what do you want people saying about this fund?
Hopefully, they can actually go back and say that it has helped them achieve certain financial goals, producing decent returns at very manageable risk. I think one of our advocacies is really to promote financial inclusion, and hopefully, through some of BPI's funds, it has helped them in a way to live their life to the fullest, given that times are very uncertain, and you would probably want to enjoy some of the returns that you may get from your investment.
Yeah, before we end this podcast episode, Sir Erwin, I just have a few fun questions to ask you. So number one is, if you weren't a fund manager today, what will you be doing kaya?
Probably a doctor.
Did you dream of being a doctor ever since, like as a little kid?
No, but my siblings are all all doctors.
All doctors.
So.
Next question is, best investment you ever made outside the stock market?
Just to be candid about it, probably investing in yourself is really important, just to balance out your sanity and work and living in very uncertain times. I guess investment in yourself is very important.
What's one piece of advice you would give your 25-year-old self?
If I were to go back in that time, probably investing early and probably allocate more to developed markets in hindsight, which continues to do well. So,
Sir Erwin, before we end this podcast, any final words or advice to our audience listening right now?
Well, if I had one advice, it's really to start their investing journey young, to be able to reap the benefits while you're still healthy. Well, give back to society, if ever, whatever you earn, you give back to society.
All right. Thank you so much for today, Sir Erwin, for joining us. And see you guys on to the next episode. So, bye everyone.